Shall we start? People?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let me kind of, since for some reason Akshay is very keen on knowing about Savonarola, we'll start with a very small introduction to Savonarola. Um, is that the correct spelling? Akshay?
I don't know, sir.
Hmm?
I don't know the spelling. Sava.
Yeah, that is the correct spelling, I'm sure. I'm almost sure. Savonarola. Yes, it was. That's the spelling. And he was a Dominican friar as opposed to people like Marsilius or Marsilio in Italian, who was a Franciscan friar. I told you there were these four mendicant orders of friars. See, friars were a brotherhood of monks. They were, well, that is the most um, that is the closest we can come to in terms of definition. They were monks, uh, and they usually lived in groups. They didn't live as individuals. They lived in groups, and that's why it's called a brotherhood. Okay, but please don't confuse it with the modern Christian notion of brotherhood. The modern Christian notion of brotherhood is different. If any of you have been to Christian institutions for your education, especially Catholic, not especially only Catholic, uh, who has been to a Catholic institution for education? Anyone? Hmm? Which school did you go to, Akshay?
Private school, sir.
No, that's okay. Even Catholic schools are private schools.
Platinum Jubilee. Ismailis. In ninth and 10th. Rest of the second to eighth, I studied in Naxambet.
Sir, nuns, is it nuns?
Yes, yes.
You were in Narsampet.
Yes, sir.
I was there when I was 6 or 8 months old. So, all right. So you have a lot of commonality with me. Then you should. Only thing missing is Nizamabad. Okay. Um, anyway, uh, Padma has left. Is it? Looks like Padma has left.
No, sir, I'm here.
You went to a Catholic college?
Yes, sir, St. Anne's.
Yeah, was it Catholic? It's Catholic if I remember well.
Not sure.
Now, did you have sisters?
Yeah.
Then that's Catholic. If you had sisters, they are Catholic.
Okay.
Um, they they are actually nuns. They're called nunnery, or that convent that they belong to. So, do you know why they are called sisters and not mothers? Now, I went to a Catholic school which was called St. Paul's. So there we had brothers. We didn't call anyone father. We only called them mothers. Sorry, brothers. Do you know what is the difference between a sister and a mother? In fact, you'll have a mother superior when you have mothers. Anyone? Okay. Sisters are those who have taken Catholic vows, and they are supposed to be the brides of Jesus Christ. All of them. Now, as long as they are not serving in a convent, or as long as they are dealing with educational institutions uh, and not actively involved in prayer, then that is the time when they are called sisters. That is true of brothers as well. They are called brothers when they are not preachers, and when they are not, uh, what should I say, they are not involved directly with the church. Uh, they don't lead congregations, and if they are running an educational institution, they are all brothers. Fathers are those who run the educational institution. Those who run an educational institution, they run a church, they run a congregation. Those people are fathers. So you have this funny situation which I didn't understand for a long time. I used to see these 25, 30-year-old people who would be called fathers, and they would be these 70-year-olds, 75-year-olds who would be called brothers. So this was always a matter of intrigue for me until I asked one of my favorite persons in life. Seriously, one of my favorite persons in life. An amazing human being, Reverend Brother Brito. Uh, he had a huge influence on my life. And Brito was Brother Brito. I'm sorry. Um, he explained to me these differences. He was that kind of principal uh, into whose office you could just walk in. There were other principals before him, and they used to terrorize us. We never saw them without a cane in their hand. And I never saw Brother Brito with a cane in a hand. He is a very kind man, very, very kind man, and had a huge influence on me. And well, what can I say? I didn't know, but no, let me not get in there. Yeah. So that is the difference between mothers and sisters and fathers and brothers. So you can have a young man as a father and an elderly man as uh, uh, what do you say, as a brother. So it's all about being a priest. If you're a priest, you become a father, or a mother. A priestess would become a mother. Though they don't lead congregations, they preach only in the convent, the women who are the brides of Christ. And I was told this bit of information, which I found to be very funny. Even those these are Jesuits by definition, Jesuits, followers of Jesus, the monks. Um, they are also supposed to be like married to Jesus, which is a funny idea, if you ask me. Anyway, so that is what brotherhood is. And Dominican friars, I told you the four mendicant is those who begged for alms for their living. So you had the Franciscan friars, the Dominican friars, the Augustinian friars, and the Carmelian friars, four mendicant orders uh, of friars, of brothers. Um, so he was a Dominican friar. All the other important people that we know are basically, what should I say? They are Franciscan friars. They were a lot more active uh, than the other three orders, but Girolamo Savonarola, he was somebody who was uh, a he was a Dominican friar. He's an interesting character because uh, his time coincides with that of the Renaissance, roughly 15th century, and towards the end of the 15th century, actually. And what he did was that he actually revolted against the church. And when I say he actually revolted against the church, he revolted against the Pope and he revolted against the ministers of the Pope, whom he felt were uh, indulging in corruption. In that sense, he anticipates the Reformation. If you want one takeaway from Girolamo Savonarola, actually, that is how you have to pronounce it in Italian, Savonarola. So if you look at it, look at that, this particular man, he anticipates the Reformation because he actively called for the reform of the church. And when the Medici, he was a Florentine, citizen. Florentine is Florence, as we call it in English, and Florentine, uh, as it is called in Italian. Okay, sorry, in Latin. Florentine is its name in Latin. I don't know, I guess it'll be Florentino or maybe just Florentine, even in Italian. And when the Medici family was deposed, uh, despite being a Dominican friar, he actually tried to establish a republic of sorts in Florence. And when he tried doing that, he faced problems from the church. And he also decided that this is as good a time as any when there was Reformation happening. Sorry, not Reformation, when there was this revolution happening in Florence. He thought that this was as good a time as any to usher in some kind of, what do we say, reform into the church. So he organized processions. Okay, he organized processions against the church and the clergy in Rome. Okay, not in Florence. He did that in Rome. It is Roma in Latin and Italian, Rome. So he did that in Rome. He organized this, and then he also did something called the burning of vanities. Some people refer to that as bonfires of vanities. Bonfire is nothing but burning. Okay, a good fire is a bonfire, by the way. So, a bonfire of vanities. What were vanities? Vanities are the pursuits that people who are not pious, people who are not very religious, people who are, you know, uh, caught in earthly, not earthly, earthly, yeah, earthy is different, earthly, who are caught in earthly pursuits. These people have what are called vanities. Uh, now, so the corrupt clergy also were indulging in vanities. So they involved a lot of material that was in the form of fancy clothes. They kept all kinds of things in their decorations and all in their homes. So what he did is he organized a burning of all these vanities, not necessarily belonging to the members of the church, but all those articles that were considered to be vanities. You know, vanity is actually a word that comes from being vain, V-A-I-N. You say, you use it as especially with, you use you use it especially with women. You use it especially with women uh, when they are proud of their beauty, or you say so and so is very vain. Okay, and when you talk about men, it is vainglorious when they take pride in things. So it becomes vainglorious. So these are what are called vanities. So he had the burning of these, and he led a procession of a very big number of Christians, telling them that the church is a corrupt institution and therefore it needs to be reformed. And he wanted the establishment of a new reformed church in the Republic of Florence after the Medici were thrown out. When it was becoming a republic, he supported the republic, very actively supported the republic, and talked about establishing a reformed church under a republican system in Florence. And obviously, this was not taken very kindly, uh, taken very kindly to by the uh, Pope and the rest of the Catholic. I mean, it wasn't a Catholic, this thing, just let's call it the church. He was summoned by the Pope again with a papal bull. So the first papal bull was not Martin Luther, but it was Savonarola. And Savonarola was somebody who defied that bull and told the Pope that he will not recognize his authority till such time that the church is flushed of all the corruption, the vanity, the uh, pride, and all these unnecessary, not unnecessary, unchristian uh, qualities that became a part of the church. So, since he did that, uh, they tried burning him, but he was protected by the people. The church tried burning him at stake. That was the standard practice. Go, if somebody's acting against you, just burn him at stake. They tried doing that, but people formed a huge circle around him in various layers. And so that's how uh, Savonarola actually was protected by the people. Is that enough, Akshay? Hmm?
Yes, sir.
So you can say that he anticipated the, I mean, he's the progenitor, so to speak, of the the Reformation movement that came under the
Martin Luther.
Martin Luther. Thanks. I don't know, as it is, people accuse me of information overload. So I used to talk about Savonarola. I used to talk about Guicciardini previously, but the diminishing interest of students in anything other than the wording in the syllabus over the years has made me avoid a lot of things which I used to actually teach. And this year I've got a bit of an evangelical zeal again. Uh, and I have to thank you people for that. Because one, you are very tolerant. The people who attend my classes, you are tolerant. I don't know, maybe you're cursing me inside, but at least outwardly you are tolerant. And then we have Akshay Pantulu in a class of his own who raises questions. So makes me feel good. I always like being questioned, challenged. Otherwise, one will start thinking, I know everything. See how quietly people are listening. Uh, so thanks, Akshay. Once
I
again,
don't know, but it was one option in MCQ, sir.
in what?
MCQ, Savonarola.
Uh, in which MCQ?
This
Ah,
first,
I only put that. Yeah, that paper was made by me, so I only put Savonarola in that.
yes, sir.
Yeah. Anyway, but others also wrote that exam. Nobody asked me who Savonarola was. Um, so it's okay. You asked, and so there is that information, which I think is quite useful. I personally think it's good information to have. So let's get on with
The
it.
name is also something strange.
Yeah, I know it's like Motorola. Hmm. It's like Motorola. So I once went to um one of these stores to buy a cell phone, and the chap was trying to push a Motorola phone, and he said, "No, no, sir, this is a very good phone." I said, "No, if you have a Savonarola, you tell me, I'll buy that straight away." So that's how that whole Motorola Savonarola thing started with me. Uh, anyway, so we've done Machiavelli, we've done with Machiavelli. So let's go on to the next step, which is the social contractualists. Now, let us not get fooled into thinking that because they are being called social contractualists, these are actually a unified group of people. Okay, let us not think of that at all. Uh, there are three of them in this order, chronological order. The first one is Thomas Hobbes. The second is John Locke, and the third is Jean Jacques Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So these are the three people who were called the social contractualists, and that is because they used the social contract mechanism in their thought. Now you must understand that each of them has very little in common with the other two, except that Thomas Hobbes paved the way for John Locke. That is about the only thing that binds them together. Another thing that is common, there are two or three things that are common to Hobbes and Locke. One thing is that they are both Englishmen. That is common to them. Then the second thing that is common to the two of them is that they are individualists. That is what makes them have these two qualities as commonalities. Uh, some people like Macpherson would say that it is basically, uh, Macpherson would say that Hobbes paved the way for Locke. So that can also be taken as a commonality. So say there are three commonalities there. Now, Jean-Jacques Rousseau is a Frenchman. He also talked about a social contract, but the social contract that he talked about is very different from both Hobbes and Locke. Uh, and if you look at Rousseau, Rousseau is the beginning of the revolt against capitalism. Now, Hobbes is the beginning of the welcoming of capitalism. John Locke embraces capitalism wholeheartedly, completely. He wants a capitalist society and a capitalist political order. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau is somebody who is paving the way for a revolt against that kind of thought which we see in John Locke. So Rousseau, technically, though he talks about a contract, the kind of contract that he's talking about is procedurally and substantially. By saying substantial, what I am saying is in substance. In substance, his social contract is completely different from the contracts that you find in Hobbes and Locke. There again, there is a similarity. There is a bit of a similarity there. And but when it comes to Rousseau, there is none. And Rousseau presents us with a bit of a, what should I say? He presents us with a bit of a conundrum, because on the one hand, he seems absolutely like a romanticist or a romantic thinker. And I'll get into what is romanticism after I finish Locke, not today. And romanticism is what is usually considered to be the opposite of, or rather the rejection of, the rationalist civilization. The rationalist civilization, please remember, possibly was ushered in by Machiavelli, whom we call a proto-modern thinker. And if you ask anyone what a rationalist civilization is, they'll tell you that it is a modern civilization. And while we were doing Charles Taylor, when we were looking at the sources of the self, you will see that the whole exercise is steeped in rationalism. So modernity itself is considered to be something which is very, very rational. Hegel is considered to be the high priest of rationality and therefore the high priest of uh, what should I say, modernity. That's what uh, you find as a sobriquet, yeah, paid to Hegel, is considered to be the high priest of rationality and the high priest of modernity. Um, so the rational age is the modern age is the rational age. There is no doubt about that. But how do you classify Rousseau? Because while we were doing um Taylor, Taylor squarely, if you remember, he voice of nature, in that he puts Rousseau squarely in the category of romantics or romanticists. Uh, but there are other people, Fred Dolmeyer being one of them, Ernest Cassirer being another one, uh, who basically will say Rousseau is a rationalist more than a romanticist. So Rousseau presents us with a little bit of a problem in terms of taxonomy, because we like to classify things, people. That's another characteristic of the modern civilization. We like classification of things. That is a taxonomy, classification. Uh, and that runs so deep, the whole exercise of taxonomy, that we even classify files, we classify books when we arrange them. So that's all a part of this whole thing of, uh, leading a life of order, and not any order, but a rational order. Living a life of rational order is what the modern civilization is all about. Just think of it yourself. You'll find that you're doing this on a daily basis. When I had to put my books uh, in a particular way, so for me, it was like I had to put them as books of political philosophy. That is the first part of the classification. The second part of the classification is, first let me put the original texts written by the authors that we study, texts written by Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Rousseau, and then commentaries of other people on these people. So, you're trying to put them in order. And probably because I have obsessive compulsive disorder, uh, I like to put things in greater order. That sounds very funny. I have a disorder about order. Uh, so what would I do? I'd say I'll first put books about Machiavelli. Then I'll put books about Hobbes. Then I'll put about Locke. Then I'll put about Rousseau. So you see, we have this kind of a compelling, uh, compelling, what should I say, urge, a compelling urge in all of us to put things in order. And Michel Foucault wrote a wonderful book, uh, which is almost postmodern, though I think he will not like that kind of, he would not have liked, because he's no more, he wouldn't have liked that kind of a label being attached to him, but he's almost postmodern when he writes this book called The Order of Things. Okay, and it is usually, Foucault is a very passionate man, somebody that you feel like reading. Uh, he's not verbose. He's not somebody given to jargon. Doesn't He's not like Hegel, who's unreadable. Okay, uh, though to be fair to Hegel, there are three phases in Hegel's life. The first phase is where he wrote books which are pretty readable. Then he wrote these extremely dense books, such as the Phenomenology of the Spirit, uh, that really represents the second phase. And the third phase, where he once again became quite lucid in his explanation of things. And that particular thing is that which we call the philosophy of right. Yes, Akshay.
Sir, how can we say that a writer is readable or not readable? Most of the texts are translated in English.
Yeah. So the English translations, they are readable or not readable. Try reading the Phenomenology of the Spirit. Hmm?
It is the fault of a translator who
No, no,
didn't
no,
translate.
no. It's not. It's how the text is in German. I read it in German, and my German is not very good, but it's good enough to read and try to understand a bit. I don't know. And in fact, the English translator has done us a great favor. Okay, because in German it is even more dense. It is even more dense. The language itself is like that. You can't state anything simply in German. Anything you state needs to be complicated. So it's not the fault of the translator. The translator has done what should I say? He has done us a favor of sorts by making it more readable than it actually is in German. In German, it is terrible. And the third phase that I was talking about, which is the time when he wrote the philosophy of right. Uh, this particular book, again, Hegel goes back to being a uh, it goes back to being a, what should I say, being a very readable kind of a writer. So you have this sandwich, which is in the sandwich, you have him unreadable. But why are we talking about Hegel? Let's get back to the contractualists. If you get back to the contractualists, then you have to remember that already two things have happened. 1 second, please. Already two things have happened. The two things that have happened are the Renaissance and the Reformation. Ah, well, the Protestant ethic need not be put in capitals, but it should actually be put in inverted commas. The reason why I say it should be put in inverted commas is because of the fact that the Protestant ethic was something that was uh, created by, um, it was created by, I mean, that phrase was created by Max Weber, the sociologist. This is the way to write it. What is wrong with this? So Max Weber is the person who created this particular phrase, Protestant ethic. And it is like what I just told you about my having an obsessive compulsive disorder, uh, which is concerned with order. You see that irony there. Uh, the Protestant ethic is also something which you should see as ironical. Okay. First and foremost, the Protestant ethic, everybody says, is due to Martin Luther, which is not a very wrong thing. But I think it is an incomplete thing to say that Martin Luther was the person who basically laid the foundation for the Reformation, and that the Protestant ethic emerged from him. I don't think that would be the complete story. The complete story is that we have to go back to Machiavelli and his separation of ethics from politics, and his total ignoring of religion and ethics while talking about politics. Now, the Reformation, as anyway, I should thank Akshay for this, for having raised the question of Savonarola. Uh, Savonarola, well, the Savonarola is a contemporary of Machiavelli. But you also have, please remember that the men of church uh, who are Marsilius, then William of William of Ockham, and it is these people, it is because of these developments that we are seeing here that we have, it is because of this Martin Luther is also, please remember that he was also in the religious order, in the Christian order. Okay, so the claim that people like James L. Weiser, the claim that they make is that Marsilius and William of Ockham, Marsilius of Padua, that is, Savonarola, uh, all these people, having already protested against the church, and especially Savonarola, being protected by the common people from being burned at stake by the church. If you look at that particular instance, then it becomes very clear that Martin Luther has had precedents which he followed. He has had precedents which he followed. Okay, and in all this, please do not underestimate Machiavelli. Machiavelli uh, is as important, or if not much more important, than these figures from the church. Just because he is not from the church, it was not as if Machiavelli uh, was immune to the punishments meted out by the church. He was not immune to those. So the thing that I would want you to keep in mind is that Machiavelli's contribution to the emergence of the Protestant ethic is pretty strong. It is pretty strong, and it is the denial of a certain kind of ethic that you have the building of a new ethic. The previous ethic was that which was about falling in line with what the church asked. And Machiavelli separated that kind of an ethic from politics and made it irrelevant. And that is what enabled uh, Martin Luther to create a different kind of an ethic that is not based in what the church was following. So this is the beginning sorry, what was I going to type? The Protestant ethic, I told you, till this time we have been using ethics and morals more or less, what should I say, We are using them more or less interchangeably, synonymously. But when the Protestant ethic happens, it is the beginning, it becomes the beginning of the distinction between ethics and morals. Uh, Ethics enter the domain of society. Ethics enter the domain of society, and when Weber is talking about the Protestant, he is talking emergence of a new social ethos. I hope that is visible. He's talking about the emergence of a new social ethos. So, from here on, ethics are derived social practices. Ethics are derived out of social practices. Oh, why do I keep doing this? Anyway, they become distinct morals, which are metaphysical. Morals become metaphysical, uh, and ethics are those which are derived out of a social ethos. And now, for example, uh, if I am your teacher, and this is not an imaginary example, it is a real example, and you don't even have to think about this in the context of online classes. You can also think about this in the context of offline classes. You know, I have had several colleagues who are in a class and their cell phone rings. They take the cell phone out, put it, look at it, okay, 1 second to the class, go out and speak sometimes for up to 10 minutes. The students are sitting in the class waiting for the teacher, and what is the teacher doing? The teacher is talking on the cell phone. Now, that is the lack of ethics of teaching. The ethics of teaching basically mean that you have to follow certain kinds of rules and regulations while you are being a teacher. You cannot do whatever you want, right? You can't take a phone call in the middle of a class, which I have done in a couple of times in the past 1 week. But that is because of the fact that I had to take those calls. Usually, if I don't take calls, I put the phone on silent. There was one instance when I did that and went to teach. That was my last stint in arts college, which was about 10 years ago. Uh, or should I say, my previous stint in arts college. Um, so, uh, my wife's father passed away. She was trying to get in touch with me. I had put the phone on silent and I wasn't taking the call. Fortunately, uh, she had the number of a colleague of mine who is a very, very good friend apart from being a colleague. And this particular colleague, she called him and he called me out of class and gave me his phone. And I said, "What is it?" And my wife was on the other side saying, "My father's gone." So, if ever somebody is in hospital or something, I make it a practice to tell people that right in the beginning, I tell people that I might be needed for whatever reasons, and therefore, with your permission, I'll keep the cell phone on. And that, in my mind, is an ethical way of doing things, which is informing you that I may be called because there could be an impending crisis. And in anticipation of the impending crisis, you would say that, well, I might be required in a particular situation, and hence I will therefore keep this thing on, this device on. Now, you'll see a number of doctors, you've gone for consultation. Uh, they take calls while they are uh, basically talking to you. Somebody calls and they take a call. And some doctors even text while the patients are talking to them. Now, all these we say are unethical because our social ethos is something that says that this is a conduct that is unbecoming of, in the first instance, a teacher, and in the second instance, a medical practitioner. It's unbecoming of that conduct. So that is the significance of ethic. When you talk about the Protestant ethic, Akshay, I think, had asked me, why is it called the Protestant ethic? Well, was it you, Akshay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So it is a Protestant ethic because the ethos has now changed. The ethos is now changed, and which means that the ethics have also changed. Ethics are practices derived out of that ethos. With the change in the ethos, you now have a different set of rights and a different set of wrongs. So, ethics have now been, not in the case of Aristotle, not in the case of uh, Plato, certainly not in the case of the Christian thinkers like St. Augustine or St. Thomas Aquinas, not in that sense where ethics are more or less the same as morals. Here, ethics are now becoming socially derived. Certain practices which were hitherto considered to be unacceptable are now being considered acceptable. Questioning of authority, which was previously unacceptable, is now acceptable. It's not unethical now to question authority. Authority could be wrong. To defy authority is no longer wrong because there is something wrong with authority. And I'm emphasizing this point. I'm emphasizing this point about authority because for me, that is the gateway to Hobbes and the social contractualists. I'm emphasizing authority so much for a reason. Okay. If you really want to know who's the first real philosopher who is a part of this new social ethos, one which defies existing authority, then I would say Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes is the one who basically questioned the existing forms, the then existing forms of authority, and tried to introduce a completely new system of authority, a completely new system. So, in the changed social ethos, you have a change in terms of ethics, you have a change in terms of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable by authority, and what kind of authority. It's a two-way thing. Previously, what was considered unacceptable by authority is now acceptable by authority because you change the social ethos. And in doing so, you have also created the opposite effect, which is you will say, I will find certain kinds of authority acceptable and certain other kinds of authority, I will find them, or I can find them unacceptable. So if you take school education, at one time, corporal uh, punishment, corporal punishment was that which was considered, you know what is corporal punishment, right? Caning of students or beating up of students, which was considered to be a part of the education process has now become illegal, unlawful, because there is a law that has been passed. I'm not talking about some other country. I'm talking about our very own country. Corporal punishment. Corporal because corporeal is that which refers to the body. A body without a life is a corpse. corpse. Being a sumo like me is corpulence. I think I'm two sumos put into one. So you must have some category called a super sumo. So that is corpulence. And while I'm talking about that, one of my fears is what will happen to my folks if I die. Who's going to carry this um, tons of weight? And dead weight is heavier than weight when somebody is alive. So I've actually made a will about how much to pay to those who carry my mortal remains, which will be huge and very, very heavy. So, because I don't want indignity in death. No, I don't want people carrying, saying, what kind of a fellow is this? How did he manage to get himself in into this size and shape, or the lack of shape? Um, it's bad enough that I lead a life of indignity. It'll be worse if I have to be, I have to bear indignity even in death. So that's why I've done the will preparation. And anyway, so to come back to social practices, so it now becomes a bidirectional thing, that you have authority that recognizes certain things as ethics and certain things as not ethics, a newer kind of ethics. And you also have newer ethics that will say that this authority is not acceptable. The moment you say that a teacher cannot cane a student or cannot hit a student, then you are basically saying that that kind of authority is not acceptable. So you are now looking at the idea that authority is not absolute, authority can be questioned, authority can be challenged, and that is the new ethic, which is the Protestant ethic. So post Machiavelli, who we said is a proto-modern thinker, we have modern thinkers in the form of Thomas Hobbes, who begin to question the nature of authority. That is how the whole idea of a social contract comes into being. Previously, anything that was supposed to be legal, anything that is supposed to be legal was supposed to be divinely ordained. Anything which is legal is that which is divinely ordained. But when the Protestant ethic kicked in, because of all these developments culminating in Martin Luther's defiance and the splintering of the church, when this particular thing has happened, this particular development, when this particular development has taken shape, then we are talking about recasting society and saying that man is rational and therefore man meaning the human being can beings sorry human beings can come together, they can come together and create a set of laws which are laws because they have been agreed upon by the people. So laws are no longer derived from an unseen force called God and the representation of that force on earth called religion. That is no longer acceptable. That is absolutely not acceptable. Now it has to be by agreement between or among the people as to what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. In this, what happened is that morality initially did not get separated. So morality also became something which was supposed to have been a subject of agreement between people or among people. So in fact, you have this book, I think it's by David Gauthier. David Gauthier wrote a book called Morals by Agreement, which is an unfortunate title because morals are not considered to be morals because they are agreed upon as moral by people. Morals are right and wrong, which transcend time and space. They transcend as in they rise above time and space. Those are morals. And the clearest articulation of that, you find this in Rousseau, by the way. Rousseau's philosophy is again a moral philosophy. But the clearest articulation of what morals are came from Immanuel Kant. When Kant said morals are transcendental, they transcend time and space. And he also said morals are categorical imperatives. Morals are categorical imperatives. What is a categorical imperative? Something as a category which is either right or wrong. For example, you cannot have a discussion on is rape right or wrong? That rape is wrong is a categorical imperative and falls in the realm of morals which are transcendental. Anywhere in the world, at any time, rape is wrong. It's not right. Murder is wrong. It is not right. Those are morals. So, morals are separated from ethics. Ethics now come under the control of people through mechanisms of contract. So I'll stop here today. Please remember this authority thing that I have talked about. That is our entry point into Thomas Hobbes. And we'll discuss that. We'll begin our discussion with the social contractualists with a few other developments. This is one set of developments. The other is the the rise of the rise of capitalism, about which I have talked to you while we were doing liberalism as an introduction to uh, libertarianism and Rawlsian liberalism in the political ideologies paper. And today evening we have a 1-hour class on multiculturalism. Thank you. I think you need to go to the other class. So thank you
Thank you,
very
sir.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.